Good morning and good evening to all our attendees and friends and supporters of Wheels Global Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to our webinar and panel discussion on CXO Think Tank Roundtable, Technologies with Potential to Transform Our Rural and Urban Communities. I'm Ratan Agarwal, serving Wheels as the current president of the foundation. I'm thrilled to be here today. My brief background, I serve on the Wheels board, bringing nearly 3 decades of rich experience in building and scaling startups, as well as senior executive roles at several Fortune 500 companies. Currently, in addition to my Wheels responsibility, I'm also managing partner and co-founder of entity called Carbon Group, which brings globally sustainable solutions in several areas, including resources, women's empowerment, education, learning, and economic development. I received my MTech at IIT Bombay, 1985 batch, and after that, my MBA at Wharton School. My bio, as well as the bios of all the panelists, will be projected on the screen. In the interest of time, only brief information will be shared. We request you to refer to our event page on Wheels website for more details on our distinguished panelists. Wheels began in 2006 as a Pan IIT initiative and is formally incorporated as a non-profit entity both in USA and India. Its mission is to improve lives in rural India and underserved communities through technology-enabled solutions. We engage with IITs and other leading institutions to co-create innovative solutions and work collaboratively with proven grassroots NGOs as partners to take those solutions to the beneficiaries. Our projects span 6 areas as reflected in WHEEL's acronym: water, health, education, energy, livelihood, and sustainability. A brief overview of WHEEL's 30 plus initiatives was shown in the beginning as well as in the end, and more details are available on our website. We hope you will visit that. As a volunteer-driven organization, Wheels relies on the support of generous donors and supporters who share our bold vision of impacting 20% of India's rural and underserved population by 2030, and similar scale about impact in other parts of the globe, in the homeland as well as adopted land in US. A quick disclaimer: all views expressed by the speakers in this webinar are their own and do not reflect nor endorsed by Wheels Global Foundation or its board. Some housekeeping messages: all attendees will be on mute through the webinar. You may ask questions to the speakers by entering it in the Q&A box. You can also chat with one of us by raising your hand or typing your request in the chat box. We will be taking on selected questions after the remarks by panelists in the first 40-45 minutes. The questions from audience will be curated and channeled to appropriate speakers. The recording of the webinar, along with the summary of the key questions, will be available after the session. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator of the session today, Suresh Shenoy. Suresh is founder and current vice chairman of Wheels Global Foundation. He previously served as the chairman of American Red Cross in the National Capital Region and on the boards of several companies and organizations, including the Fairfax County Library Foundation and the Association for Intelligent Information Management, which recognized him with their highest technology honor, the Award of Merit. He also served as co-president of Pan IIT North America and is currently on the board of IIT Bombay Heritage Foundation. He holds a bachelor's degree in metallurgy from IIT Bombay and MBA from University of Connecticut, and also an adjunct faculty member of George Mason University. With that, it's my pleasure to invite Suresh to kick off the session.
Thank you, Ratan. Thanks for that generous introduction. We are in a very fast-moving world with evolving technological landscape, uh, and the intersection of technology adoption and policy management stands as a critical nexus, shaping the trajectories of societies, economies, and governance structures worldwide. As emerging technologies permeate every aspect of human life, from artificial intelligence and blockchain to biotechnology, quantum computing, etc., the need for informed, agile, and forward-thinking policy frameworks are required to drive strategic investments, and that becomes a national and global priority. In light of this necessity, the establishment of a think tank focusing on matters related to technology adoption and policy management presents a very pivotal initiative for us at Wheels Global. Such a think tank would serve as a critical bridge between the brightest technology and business minds and those with responsibility for the highest level policies and investment decisions to transform resource-constrained communities. We are very fortunate that today, on our first inaugural Think Tank Roundtable, we have a wonderful panel of speakers who bring amazing backgrounds and experiences that are clearly positioned to shape how we work, how we live, and how we deliver services to our communities. Uh, so I'm going to stop there about why we are having this event, and I'm sure you will find out the important message from today's panelists as to how manufacturing and research development is shaping the future. So with that, I'm going to request our first speaker, Dr. Ramesh Bhargava, to take over. He is the chairman and chief scientist of Nanocrystal Magnetics Inc. and the CEO of Theranostics. Dr. Bhargava completed his MSc in physics from Allahabad University and his PhD from Columbia. He has had a distinguished research career at IBM, at Bell Labs, and Philips Research Laboratories. They are the gold standards of technology research. He left Philips as a chief scientist and created the nanocrystal technology company in East Coast, and the first nanotechnology company in the East Coast. Dr. Alexei Yakimov, he was a Nobel laureate in 2023. He joined Dr. Bhargava in 1998 to develop the application of doped quantum dots for medical and high-power LED devices. Today, these doped nanocrystals play a critical role in targeted drug delivery and integrated magnetic devices. You'll hear more about it from him because he's talking about the next generation of magnetic devices and permanent magnets for electric magnets for portable MRI systems, lightweight and compact transformers, etc. So thank you for joining us today, Rameshwarji. Over to you.
Thank you. It's a PowerPoint. They have
slides.
Yes. Sure. Okay. So what I'm presenting today is a breakthrough in physics that will create new products and improve the existing products. When I say new products, which people have not even thought about today, and I'll take an example with their strong permanent magnets without rare earths elements and beyond. Rare earth elements are in today a hot subject because Chinese control the whole market, but 94% of these powerful magnets, which are the basis for electric vehicle, drones, industrial robots, and many more. And in defense, every defense equipment is based on these magnets. So without these magnets, rest of the world cannot rapidly grow. So let me describe what I call the basis of whole discovery I have made. The electron is a fundamental particle which possesses two properties, charge and spin. The control flow of charge of an electron was that led the discovery of transistor in 1947 and created the IC industry referred as the first electronic revolution. Our discovery of control of the second property, which is electron spin, in nanocrystal is likely to lead to create the second electronic revolution in coming decades. That's why this, whatever we talk today, will make a big difference in the coming decades in many applications. My personal view is if India embraces this technology today, they can lead in this technological revolution, which is expected to impact the next decades. Now, let me describe the discovery of this based on nanocrystals. When you have a nanocrystal of a semiconductor, the same semiconductor, when it's large size, say of the order of 8 nanometer, it will emit red, which is shown in the slide. But if you reduce it to 3 nanometer, it gives blue light. And this is based on a quantum mechanical concept called a particle in a box. And this is what led to basically discovery of quantum dots and Nobel Prize of 2023 to 3 scientists, but one scientist formerly from Russia was working with us for 19 years, and he shared the prize. So we are very honored. I mean, we really feel grateful about it. Now, what our discovery is that we take the same quantum dot and put an additional dopant which is neutral.
Sorry, go back.
When you put go back. Yes. When you put in a nanoparticle a dopant, what happens is its quantum confinement leads to polarized spin. This polarized spin lines up all the spins of the say this quantum dot, and if it happens to be magnetic, it will make very strong ferromagnetic nanoparticle. And this combination of paramagnetic and ferromagnetic particle as a nanocomposites leads to what I call very strong magnets. This was described by theoreticians for the last 30 years, and we were able to achieve for the first time. Next slide. So this is, I just want to compare what today's rare earth magnets are and what our non-rare earth ferrite system would do. Of course, our particles are 20 nanometer, whereas rare earth are about 1 micron to 5 micron. But the key thing is the fabrication temperature used for rare earth is greater than 1000 degrees C. We can actually, we make our nanoparticle below 100 degrees C, which is basically below the boiling point of water. The maximum operating temperature of these magnets for rare earth is about 200 degrees C, whereas in our case, it is 400 degrees C, and it's very extremely independent of temperature, means you can operate from 30 degrees C to 400 C without loss of performance. Our material is already oxides, so they don't rust. It's already rust, whereas rare earth systems are metal, and so they have to be protected from the moisture and to avoid oxidation. The key thing is the process Chinese use is highly toxic to the point that 1 ton of magnet when it is produced, this produces 2,000 tons of toxic waste, including radioactive. So only today in the world, China can follow this process make the rare earth magnets. Our process is based on water solution, and aqueous phase is completely green. And the performance of rare earth systems is maximum, theoretically, is a number which is 60 mega Gauss Oersted. Ours is projected to be twice of that. Next slide. So there are other applications besides the magnets, which the magnet I told you they are in electric vehicle all over. In India would probably be using the most electric vehicles in the world anyway, because one-wheeler, two-wheeler, and cars and trucks. But one can use these tiny magnets to produce a tiny magnetic material, make better electromagnets, which are smaller and lighter, transformers, which are smaller and lighter, because in India, electricity has to still go to the villages, and you need these transformers to transmit for the transmission purposes. Renewable energy, wind turbines require these large magnets. And there's a concept where if we use our material, we can make in the health sector a portable MRI, which means one can detect cancer in any villages using just portable MRI system. Next slide. So in summary and conclusion, basically, I just want to tell you that this dopant-induced ferromagnetic material will replace the performance of rare earth permanent magnets from China. It's completely green technology. The concept is that you put a single dopant. Dopants in semiconductors are charged, but this is a neutral dopant in 15 nanometer size nanoparticle. It has enabled it to develop the first non-rare earth-based strong magnetic material, and we are working on demonstrating the magnet. We were lucky to be awarded a key patent in 2023, and there are several patents are being filed. This nanocomposite powder will have a significant performance in many, many magnetic devices. So what I'm trying to tell you that this discovery as transistor led to the first electronic revolution. You're talking about artificial or intelligence. This discovery will create small magnetic particles which will lead to magnetic intelligence. Magnetic intelligence means it doesn't require power for two inert units to communicate. It communicates with the magnetic field itself. Okay, again, I think.
Next slide. Yeah, there's one more, I think.
Next slide.
This one.
So now I just want to, these are my personal recommendations, because people in most of the world today have forgotten about magnetism. There are no courses in magnetism in graduate school or undergraduate. But this is going to, the discovery will revolutionize the understanding of magnetism. And so basically, I recommend that there should be also an R&D of these doped magnetic material, because the applications are so much, I can't even tell you, because I don't know all the applications. This control of electron spin. As I told you, the control of electron charge led to the integrated circuit revolution. Control of electron spin will help India to dominate in the second electronic revolution. Raw materials which we use are available in plentiful, abundant in India, and they can do. But the last thing is, I'm very excited about that. This field is open to scientific discoveries, which may lead to several Nobel Prizes in the future. But using this controlled spin polarization at room temperature. And you talked about quantum computing. Quantum computing would not be achieved without this spin control. So we have a better chance. And this, everything I've told you works at room temperature or higher temperature. You don't need sub or lower temperature. So thank you. And any questions, I'm ready to answer. And my information is given in the next slide.
Thank you so much, Rameshwarji. That was an eye-opener because they say that if you want to see what the future is going to look like, just walk the hallways of any research institution. And what you have informed us about today, about the future of electromagnets and portable MRIs, etc., is absolutely stunning and wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that we will have a lot of questions on what it costs to do that, etc. Our next speaker is Dr. G. Rajeshwaran. Again, an inventor and highly qualified individual. And he's the director of and CEO of the Grantwood Technologies in Rochester, New York. He received his BE, MTech, and PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Madras, the IIT Bombay, and the State University of New York. And he has been very active in technology development and the commercialization of LED, OLED, and photovoltaic technologies. A substantial portion of his research and management career has focused on product delivery. Raj was instrumental in the establishment of the world's first AMOLED display manufacturing, together with companies in Japan, etc. His tenure, he was a vice president of Kodak's display business unit. He's also involved in photovoltaics at Moser Baer. He was a group CTO for a 5-year tenure in India. And during that period, he also served as the CEO of the Moser Baer Technologies USA and director of OM&T in Netherlands to develop OLED lighting systems. He has delivered several lectures. He has 16 patents in the field of LEDs, OLEDs, and photovoltaics. And Raj was, in 2013, he was elected a fellow of the Society of Information Display for pioneering contributions to the development of manufacturing. Thank you so much for joining us today, Raji. Please, over to you.
Thanks, Suresh. So I deliver products, and many of you are probably holding some of the products that contain OLED displays in your hand. They come from brands like Samsung, Apple, LG, etc. But the birth of all that, where it all start from, is what I'm going to explain to you, and it's a long journey from beginning to end. So I'm going to cover the innovation phase, where it came from and what did I do, and the development of the industry, the display industry, and what particular contributions my team has made. Because this kind of thing is not an individual thing. You have to work in multiple teams and hundreds of engineers across the world. So you can't just claim everything is my contribution. It has to be a teamwork. Then I'll focus on what is next coming and what am I doing at IIT Madras these days after finishing the corporate career to bring India's opportunities and the next wave of technology in this area. So it can hold fancier and better and lightweight and foldable and flexible and rollable displays in your hand. So with that, let me go to the next slide. So this is a long time ago in Kodak, within the bowels of the Kodak Research Laboratory. We had some excellent scientists we had a lot of chemicals from the photography industry. So my colleague, Professor ThinkTank and Steve Van Slyke were the inventors of OLED device. They did that about 15 years before I joined the team to commercialize this thing. And I'll tell you what we did. But the first display we made is shown here. In 1999, it was the very first AMOLED display in Kodak laboratories in Rochester, where I combined the inventions of my colleagues from another material laboratory along with electronics. So it is a marriage of chemistry and electronics. So you need semiconductors for all the pixels that you show here, emitting light in different colors, is a semiconductor aspect of this technology. And then the chemicals on top, or the chemistry part of it, which came from Kodak. So you can see something clearly here. You have to explain this unless you see it. It stands out. OLED images are very vibrant. They represent the individual colors of the pigments that you put into the emitting layers. And the viewing angle is very good. It's a Lambertian emitter, so it doesn't emit one particular direction. And you can see that clearly on the picture on the right. The equivalent LCD liquid crystal display of 1999, you couldn't see on from the sides. So it depends on application. If you want to see everything yourself and not share with your neighbors, that kind of viewing angle control is important. We do that these days in mobile phones, TVs, etc. with AMOLED. So what is AMOLED? It's active matrix organic light emitting diode. The reason it's called LED is because all the characteristics of LEDs, diode-like function in a normal diode is there. In other words, you put in voltage and then you get current, and the characteristics are very similar to a light emitting diode. So my colleague named it organic light emitting diode. I made the active matrix combined with OLED to make displays. So next slide, please. Okay, so that was 1999. That's almost 25 years ago. And it has grown from zero market share in the display industry to greater than $50 billion in 2024. That's a growth of phenomenal growth of display technology. Typically, if you look at the picture on the left, the y-axis is billions of dollars, and on the x-axis is the year. You can see that displays have been around for a long time. They were the CRT, the cathode ray tubes. Then came along the plasmas, the liquid crystal displays, and the yellow is a substantially yellowish color until 2017 here is LCD displays. And on the right-hand side picture, it's taking you up to 2024. The industry has grown to $125, $130 billion worldwide. Just the panel shipment. This is not the product that goes along with it. In fact, the display like this, now OLED has taken about a 45% share of the entire display industry. The rest is all LCD. So it's kind of equal, and they are winning in different segments and higher share, etc. But this curve actually represents $1 trillion industry, because when you make a Galaxy phone or an Apple phone, they're sold at a much higher price, and the market is really into $1 trillion, whereas these components, which are about 10 to 20% of the cost of a full product, represent this curve here. So what do we need? What are the factors that created this growth? First of all, you need a market pull. You need a killer app, what we call killer apps. So first it was the notebook PC that drove the industry to become something beyond a wafer size curiosity. This one started at what I'll tell you the next slide, what those generations are. But you're talking about things, substrates on which you fabricate these things and make thin film transistors, which are semiconductors, over a very large area of glass. And then on top of that, you have to add the light emitting portion of it, which could be the liquid crystal, which is a voltage controlled valve, or a OLED, like a emitting device. So market pull is important, and it takes a long. First of all, I didn't note one thing here: know-how and capital are the things noticed, but you also need patience. It took 25 years to grow, and every industry has taken 25 years to grow. So that is the kind of and the top two participants in the industry must always watch behind and see what is coming, because the top two generally rules the industry. So the killer apps are important. You have to be there for a long time. You have to invest money, and every 5 years, the flavor of technology changes before a new technology comes over. And you need a lot of capital, a lot of money. So these are the key elements of industry growth. And I spent a lot of time doing each of these things, from the laboratory innovation to bringing it to the market and finally handing it over through patent control and patent sales to LG, Samsung, and other display-centric gadget-making companies. Next. By the way, in the course of doing this, I have also learned how to speak Japanese, which is a freebie. Just by working in Japan with a bunch of 500 engineers and my colleagues, you have to learn. Never went to class, but you learn something in the process. So what is our contribution? There are numerous contributions that result in about 2,000 plus patent portfolio from Kodak, which was eventually sold in 2008 2008 or 9, after I moved to India, I had finished this sale before I moved to LG Electronics, and then they are all cross-licensed. This industry tends to go from country to country depending on who is showing the most interest. Started in the US, went to Japan, from there to Korea and Taiwan. Now it's in China, and China is currently ruling the liquid crystal display world. But Korea is ruling the organic LED world. So it's concentrated, and the know-how is concentrated in these spaces. So you have to learn a lot by practice on the job, and therefore you have to spend a lot of money on big equipment and a lot of investments. So our contribution was to make this device that you show on the left-hand side of this slide, slide number 3, section 3. The device consists of organic molecules evaporated in a vacuum on top of a conductive electrode, and then sealed with an alternate cathode on the top. These are about the whole thickness of the device is about 1,200 angstrom, 120 nanometers. Why is that important? Because that makes emitting devices, the voltage across them, within the range of consumer electronics, 5 volts. And by doing that in vacuum and controlled way in a molecular deposition, you apply independent molecules with different functions to be participating and delivering their properties. So you have electron transport, whole transport layers, and in the middle where they meet, you have the emissive dopant, similar to the dopant Dr. Bhargava just mentioned. In this case, it is excitonic, photonic dopant that absorbs the excitonic energies combined in the positive and negative charges and converts into emitting light. The second key improvement to make it display was the picture on the right-hand side or top. You can see OLED kind of put on top of a TFT backplate. So this combination is what I did in 1999. Putting this together, I had a team of about 50 people around the world, and fortunately, it went somewhere, this international team, and we made the first display that I showed you in the earlier slide at that time. So you had to be able to pattern the red, green, and blue pixels above equivalent TFT circuits below it. The circuits, so typically a display always has to have a TFT backplane and a front plane. Without these combinations, you don't have a display. So you need to direct your energy to particular pixels, able to control the grayscale and show uniform image. And the other pictures at the bottom are my manufacturing contributions, delivery of organic molecules in such a thin layer uniformly across a very large substrate, and then putting machines together. And all this portfolio of patents from invention to market netted about 2,000 plus patents, which eventually sold to companies in Asia that want to go into electronics. Next slide. So on the left-hand side, you can see the size of glass. Silicon wafer, for instance, would be 300 millimeter by 300 millimeters diameter, would be less than Gen 2, the smallest block in the left-hand side. So these are glass substrates that have grown, driven by economies of scale. So if you want to make television, you go to larger substrates. You need something that has many more than many TVs can fit into a large glass, and then you cut to size. So these are called mother glass, and the mother generation of TVs today is either Gen 8.5 or Gen 10.5 fabs, and the OLEDs are made at Gen 6 kind of fabs. So just some key points. The next frontiers, flexible OLED display technologies will be there. It'll be rollable, foldable, that sort of technologies. So expand to all information technology. In other words, OLEDs today are in the smartphones and in some percentage in the TVs, whereas LCD occupies the rest of the space. There'll be a battle in this area of each one trying to outdo the other based on the specifications and the expectations for the product. Number 3, grow the display from current $50 billion, it'll grow to $100 billion size. The market's also expanding. And the next step, what is beyond the smartphone? There was no smartphone before 2010 in big volumes. There'll be another one coming. I hope it'll be India-based killer app. Wherever there's a market expanding, that's where apps come and technologies go to serve it. And finally, we reduce the cost of entry. These cost $1 billion to enter. Only big companies, big cash reserves can enter. at IIT Madras, we're looking at lower cost display technology and see if we can make it what in southern India we call Tirupur model, make it small scale, and we have to bring down the speed and bring up the manufacturing speed and bring down the cost. It's called economies of speed rather than economies of scale. Next slide. And this is the last slide. The India opportunity. So there's a lot of opportunities for India in this market, from materials, devices, systems, manufacturing, etc., etc. But here are the key ones that I've been working at IIT Madras the last 5 years to bring together and see here are some of the things, and many things are done, many things have to be done. The market demand for displays and display-centric products in India has grown to approximately $20 billion per year. In other words, for 5 years, you'll spend $100 billion importing displays. This is the pitch I made to the Indian government about 5 years ago, and, we got started. Now, that means this relates to more than $1 trillion in products in electronics on the display-centric products like phones and notebooks and whatever gadgets are going to appear. Number two, for example, 250 million smartphones per year are being assembled in India. Right now, it's assembly, small value add, but a lot of employment. All displays for all applications are being imported currently. Therefore, there is an ideal make in India technology and opportunity. Number three, establish advanced R&D centers. One of them is in IIT Madras. Product development centers, ventures, create roadmaps for the entire nation, and manufacturing hubs for display manufacturing in India. The Ministry of Electronics has nominated IIT Madras as a National Center of Excellence for. So anybody in India, if you come by Chennai, please feel free to stop by. Number four, India's participating in the display industry requires it to mobilize capital, secure know-how, and invest for the long term. And that's what we're doing, mobilizing Indian capital, bringing know-how from other people that have it overseas in Asia. And then investments are in discussion. The government has published and established attractive incentives under the India Semiconductor Mission policy to attract public-private partnerships for display manufacturing, including AMOLED displays. Now, the issue is going to be how to create a new patent portfolio or how to license it, because it's concentrated in Korea, and Korean export control laws forbid AMOLED displays from being transferred anywhere. I was the one who brought it to Korea about 20 years ago. Can't use all that. But fortunately, patents are obsolete now. With that, I stop. Maybe I took 3 more minutes than necessary. So,
Thank you very much, Raji. That was incredible insights into the future of display devices. Our lives are now, governed by three screens: our phones, our smartphone, our TV, and our computer screen. So knowing where that display is going is very important. So thank you very much. And you ended your presentation with an excellent segue to our next speaker, Dr. Ranbir Singh. He is a pioneer and a leader in the field of silicon carbide power semiconductors for high power and high frequency applications. And he has 30 patents, written a book on these subjects. He's an alumnus of IIT Delhi and from my perspective, very proudly say that he is very closely associated with Wheels Global Foundation as a director and a trustee. His specialties include semiconductors, hybrid vehicles, solar inverters, power radiation, power semiconductors, and so on. But more importantly, he has now recently, embraced what he calls open source manufacturing. And I think what you mentioned is that manufacturing requires a lot of capital. But what we are going to hear from Ranbir Singh will probably address some of the newer paradigms for manufacturing. So over to you, Ranbir.
Thanks so much for that introduction. I'm honored to be on this panel. Today I'd like to talk about open source hardware revolution that is underway. As most of my friends tell me, I usually like to talk about things that I'm not an expert on. So I believe in this with a passion, open source hardware, because I believe it will democratize education, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So next slide, please. So, what is open source hardware? Much like soft open source software, which all of you are very familiar with these days, like Linux operating system or and a whole lot of web-based techniques and so on, where people all over the world come in and contribute, and then it becomes a product that is very widely accepted and used and becomes the de facto standard. Open source hardware is a parallel revolution that has been going on where people share their designs, they make systems, subsystems, subcomponents, components, and so on, and try to open source all of them. I believe this is particularly relevant for India, and the reason is that India has, 90 crores, young people. It is, in my opinion, my personal opinion, nearly impossible to teach them uh, and bring them up to the world standards unless we can sort of enthuse them into getting getting in touch with the world global community by themselves in technology. And this open source hardware is a very good mechanism for them to do that. Um, so essentially, what open source hardware is publicly shared physical technology designs. It promotes transparency, collaboration, and affordability. I want to point out here that the progress in technology and human this thing happens through sharing of your knowledge, your knowledge, your products, and so on. And I think open source hardware is a perfect vehicle for students, young people to learn about how to share, how to collaborate, how to build products, how to bring in their own unique take on things, and most importantly, build companies, build products. I think it is also very important for us to use this vehicle to, you know, teach students about, things that they can do by sitting on, shoulders of giants there. So I wanted to give a shout out to Maker Bhavan Foundation, which has established 12 Tinkerer Labs, which is basically labs in which there are uh, 3D printers, cameras, scanners, microcontrollers, and a well laid out curriculum which are 24/7 accessible labs for students in various colleges in India. This was actually started by my friend Hemant Kanakia, who is from IIT Bombay and Stanford. I'm privileged to have sponsored one of these labs in IIT Ropar. Next slide, please. So there are actually some real compelling economic reasons to do that also. There are some market projections say that open source hardware will lead to, multi-billion dollar, multi-tens of billions of dollars markets. What we are talking about, I said six key technologies, but that is not, that's just a very limited number. But just to give an idea, open source drones, laboratory equipment, chip designs, communications, IoTs, 3D printing, and so on. There are thousands of people who have adopted this through their educational systems. So essentially, this is a community-driven ecosystem to expand the open source hardware through STEM education. Next slide, please. So, how does this exactly work? There are a whole lot of supporting organizations, which I list over here, where they are repositories for designs, they are repositories for knowledge, they are repositories for people to collaborate worldwide, where they teach how to build a laboratory, which is good for making products as such or projects as such. There are also instructions and resources like those listed here. I also was very, very intrigued by this journal called Hardware X, and there are a few others like that, which are open journals in which people publish articles on how they build their projects. One of them was really curious, in which they built during COVID times, like an early stage onset of COVID, they built a respirator using some commonly used, hardware. And sometimes what was most intriguing to me, I got into this almost 15, 20 years ago, while building my company, where we needed low cost lab equipment, which was very hard. I mean, lab equipment, as most of the educational institutions might know, is quite expensive, and proprietary. It's not easy to maintain it. You have to call people from the company to service this and so on. But here, in one of the articles in Hardware X, they said, here's an oscilloscope or whatever other equipment was. And then they said, this costs this, $20,000. And I have created the same exact equivalence of it in $300. So so there is a really good, way in which they explain this as such, and people give out the entire bill of materials, schematics, downloadable designs in these articles, so that people can recreate what this author had done. I also wanted to point out to places where crowdsourcing happens, where people can actually sell their modular components, subcomponents, subsystems, and so on. And there are places like Crowd Supply at India and so on. These are also places which go very closely with getting funding for your projects. So it is a perfect place to actually raise money also, in order to make your product successful. So I would like to, I dream of having a distributed system all over India, where people or students are making things, showcasing them, trying to assess how they are being received by the market and so on. Next slide, please. So, what are the other examples of open source hardware? A fairly detailed list, but not complete list, can be found on this Wikipedia site. There are lists over here, but you can literally find all kinds of things like open source laptops with detailed designs, smartwatches, audio electronics, and I give some examples here. Framework Navina. I do want to make a shout out to this particular company called Tech Burner that is listed over here. An Indian company, a bunch of three or four Indian students, Indian professionals very young people who made a smartwatch basically to compete with things like Apple Watch or whatever smartwatches there are. And they did it in a very, very nice way. And I follow this Indian business podcast called Think School or something like that, by Ganesh something, and they were featured over there. And that video is just amazing. How these young people built a smartwatch from scratch using many open source hardware and software resources, and then put their own things on top of it to create a good low cost system. Also, there are telephony, communications, radios, modems. There are huge number of projects which are being worked on worldwide. I do want to also point out about renewable energy, home automation, and biotech projects that are out there. There are some serious efforts for making things for social good, so that there are this global village construction set is an open source hardware platform where people are building things for conservation of environment and so on. At this point, I do want to make a shout out to another organization called Social Alpha, which I also am a patron of. Social Alpha is based out of Bangalore and IIT Delhi and Pune, where they are funding entrepreneurs to they develop business plans, which is a fantastic way, the way they build the business plans, and connect them to entrepreneurs, to investors, to build entrepreneurial ventures for social good. So the social good is a very key part of that whole effort. Next slide, please. So I do want to point out about two particular areas which are close to my heart. One is the open robotics platform. Some of you may be surprised to know that, or at least I'm told, that 85% of all good drones are actually these days made by just one company in China called DJI. And the challenge there is mostly software, control software and hardware that goes with it. But I wanted to point out there are open source tools which are listed over here, autopilot software, modular flight control systems, and even how to assess map data, all open source projects, which are key enablers for a good drone technology, which is quite key. Drone and robotics go hand in hand for these kind of projects. And final slide, please. Also, open source chip design, again, a very important part of how you can democratize chip design and fabrication. RISC-V is a very important project in which you literally can build your own microprocessor by just open source. You can download and design systems and add to it and so on. So the RISC-V is a very important project, which I think should be taught to everybody who's relevant here. There are also all kinds of libraries of chip cores that are out there that you can incorporate to build your own chips. Also, there are various foundries like Google Skywater, OpenPDK, where these open source software designs can be made into physical chips. There are a few other lower cost options where you can get your chips made using purely open source chips as such. So, yeah, finally, all I'd say is that I think this is my vision to have many people in India be exposed to the open source ecosystem, be part of it. I think with the largest number of young people, this open source hardware should be, in fact, dominated by India, I think. At this time, what I've seen so far in terms of the marketplace in India, uh, uh, is that I think is dominated by China by basically 4-1. And Chinese have adopted open sources in very big way, and I hope that India can be uh, also learning from that. Thanks so much. Sorry for going a little over. Hopefully.
Thank you, Ranveer. Yeah, these subjects are so interesting, and it's very difficult to put them into a 10-minute format. I realize that, but this has been an education in and of itself. Look, there is clearly a tendency now to combine learning by doing. So Maker Bhavan is a wonderful initiative. Thank you for taking part in that, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about those kind of ventures going forward. Our next speaker sort of brings it all together because he is right in the middle of all the manufacturing of electronic products. I have the pleasure of introducing our last speaker, Sundar Kamath. Dr. Sundar Kamath, he's a Senior Vice President, Chief Technology Officer of Sanmina Corporation, which has a presence in 20 countries and a world-class plant and design center in Chennai, India. And prior to Sanmina, Dr. Kamath was also a product management role, served in a product management role at IBM Microelectronics, Micromodule Systems in Cupertino. He's a Thai charter member, a former board member of the International Electronics Manufacturing Initiative. He has 11 patents. He's a co-author of 25 technical papers and spoken at various industry conferences. Again, for me, from a personal perspective, I'm very proud that he is also a director of our Wheels Global Foundation. He's a founder of Ideal Village initiative at Stanford University, with whom we have collaborated, and also an active member of the Sai Foundation in Bangalore. Again, something that Wheels has collaborated with in many ways. So over to you, Sundar.
Just one quick note for all the audience. We will be taking the questions, so I would encourage everybody to submit their questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suresh, for that introduction. So you heard from 3 speakers, and each of them specializes in certain technologies. For example, magnetics, OLED displays, and compound semiconductors of Ranveer, and of course the open source hardware that he's talking about. So in my talk, I'm going to talk about how all this comes together to make systems. And when we look at, I'm going to start off actually with goals that have been set for India. When you look at the Amrit Kaal for 2047, to become a 26 to 30 trillion GDP economy, $15,000 to $20,000 per capita, to become a fully developed nation. How is that going to happen? When you look at the current statistics for India, this will happen when the economy grows at an average of 6 to 8% for the next 22 years. And how is that going to happen? That comes through because there's a whole bunch of initiatives that feed the economy, whether it's the global hub for IT services, the young population, the workforce, the digitization that's happening of the entire economy and the infrastructure, and the infrastructure development from the hardware side. And of course, one of the areas that's close to me is the world-class electronics manufacturing, semiconductors and systems. And then the other areas would be space, clean energy, and defense and aerospace. Next slide. So all of those products have to be built. So let me talk a little bit about this semiconductors and systems industry. It is by far one of the most important industries in the world today. It's critical for any nation's growth, just like oil has been for a long time and energy. And it's especially so in India's case because so much of the electronics, components, and materials and so on are imported, and that too predominantly from China. If you look at today, India's electronics imports, 45% of it comes from China. And the rest of it comes from South Korea, Vietnam, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and so on. So to develop a full-blown electronics industry, what is extremely important is the localization of the component supply chain, and then the skills that are needed to build these systems. So there is an ecosystem requirement. But I do believe that the golden age of electronics manufacturing has arrived in India. It's a massive opportunity for job creation as well as GDP growth. And that's what I'm going to focus on. Now, I just want to give you a quick snapshot of the world industry. When you look at the entire electronics, electrical industry, manufacturing, the value add, it's about $3.5 trillion. Of that, consumer electronics products manufacturing is about 800 billion. Semiconductors, active devices, is about 800 trillion. The electronics manufacturing piece, putting it all together, is about 600 billion. Sorry, not trillion, billion. And then the growth rate of these industries averages between 5 to 7%. And China today dominates with about 24% of that world market. So what's important? The supply chain resiliency, diversification of supply base, and what today has been called as the China plus one strategy. So countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand. And I do believe this is a massive opportunity for India to become the next major global hub for electronics, components, and manufacturing. And just quickly on the company that I work for here in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, is Sanmina. It was founded in 1980, right here in the Bay Area. We're NASDAQ listed. We're about 8 to 9 billion in sales, 20 countries, about 35,000 employees. And we build systems, both design and manufacture them end to end. And the technologies include optical, wireless, all the AI data centers, high reliability, mission critical products for medical, communications, defense. And we still have about 1 million square feet of manufacturing right here in Silicon Valley. And given all the talk about made in USA, we've got a very good footprint in the US, between 8 US states, Canada, and Mexico. And the most recent campus that we opened up, it's almost 15 years now, was in Chennai, in India. It's a 100-acre campus. And this has become among all our global locations, Chennai has become the fastest growing campus. Next slide. And this shows a view of our campus outside the city of Chennai. This is 100 acres. We have two large buildings, roughly about 600,000 square feet. The one on the right is dedicated for exports, and that's called the special economic zone. And the one on the left is for the domestic tariff area, the domestic. So we bring components in, we source them from either from India or from outside, build the systems, and then either export them or ship them into the domestic market. And both buildings are full now, so we're adding a third building, which will be coming up by December of this year. And we support all major markets that we play in: communications, cloud, networking, medical, automotive, industrial, clean energy, defense, and aerospace. And we are building some of the most advanced systems in India, which is not many people may be aware of, but this plant that we have in India is as good, if not better, than some of our global plants. So from a technology, capability, skill base, and supply chain management, we have accomplished all of those. And of course, quality, we're able to do that in India, which means the potential for growth is massive. The next slide. I do want to touch on localizing supply chain. It took us 15 years to localize the components that I'm showing here, and none of these are semiconductor devices. We are talking about plastics, moldings, stampings, die castings, packaging materials, and hardwares like nuts and bolts and screws and so on, heat sinks, cables, and so on. So all of this we are able to source in India, and we're able to get world-class quality, and that meets our standards for quality, delivery, cost, cycle time. So we have about 60 suppliers that we've developed in India. But as I said again, you don't see too many active or passive device suppliers within our supply base. That's still coming from China or Taiwan or Hong Kong or Vietnam and so on. Okay, so this is a big area of opportunity for people to enter. Next slide. I also want to give you a quick snapshot of what is happening in India today. And we have three legs to this. We have the IC design and system design. And that industry started a long time ago when a lot of the OEMs from the US, like Motorola and TI, started the first design centers in Bangalore. And so today, if you look on the left-hand block, almost every major semiconductor house or OEM has design capabilities in India. India is one of the largest centers for IC design and system design. Of course, all of these work for brand name companies. And as Ranveer was talking about, developing the open source hardware infrastructure would be a fantastic thing that all of these engineers can contribute to mentor and educate. On the manufacturing side, a lot of the brand names have come into India, but it's still a fraction of what's there in China. So you see companies like Samsung, Nokia, Dell, Motorola, and so on, GE, for example, Delta Electronics on the power side, Hyundai, LG, Philips, and so on. And then there's a lot of competition. The good news today is all the states are competing to attract the global brands. And the iPhone is, of course, the most, I would say, the best success story that India has. What's happened in the last 5 years, literally in the last 3 years, how the iPhone manufacturing, including the latest models, has ramped up with companies like Wistron and Pegatron coming in, and Foxconn. And we see India is now actually, all of the iPhones that are coming into the US are coming from India. And it's made a tremendous difference in terms of the infrastructure for mobile phone manufacturing. And on the right, you see the global, within the nation, what the locations of centers of electronics manufacturing. Chennai, I would say, is #1 across India for electronics and manufacturing. Bangalore is fast developing, and the border between Bangalore and Chennai, Tamil Nadu, which is Hosur, that area is developing. Hyderabad is now also growing. Pune, And then in the north, it's typically Noida, Gurgaon, and in UP, areas are now starting to develop with all the brand names. There's both Indian manufacturers as well as global manufacturers.
Sundar, if we
Next
can
slide.
bring this to conclusion because we are running out of time.
Next
if you
slide.
can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is my last slide, and what I'm talking about here is what are some of the key actions for the government, industry, and academia. So it's really 4 areas: supply chain, product development, which is the hardware and software, and then the prototyping of the product, the qualification and validation of the product to launch into manufacturing. And the third bullet is the manufacturing of these products, the quality systems, the smart factories, automation manufacturing, and the last area is the logistics and fulfillment. So I won't go into details, but there's a whole bunch of recommendations that I hear, and I'll stop with that.
Thank you very much, Sundar. This has been an eye-opening kind of inaugural session for our think tank. It just tells us the size and scope of brilliant members of our community with their rich experience, how we can impact the development process and meet the objectives of India to become a major global economy. So there are several questions from the audience. But I'm going to start with each one and maybe ask you to please limit your answer to maybe 1 or 2 minutes at the most. And then we'll post the questions that have not been answered on our website. And we will also post some key takeaways. I'll start with Rameshwarji. You mentioned that these emerging technologies, specifically those related to nanocrystals, should be taught at the IITs and other educational institutions. Do you have any ideas on how this can be done? And particularly keeping in mind the kind of Maker Bhavan type of activities that Ranbir has mentioned, where learning is going from pure theory to actually learning by doing. Can you sort of think about how your ideas for quantum and the doping technologies, etc., can be used and integrated into an IIT curriculum?
The nanotechnology basically is the integration of chemistry, physics, and also when you come to applications of biology. So the integration, basically making material which we can't see. So we have to look at infer the properties with doing certain experiments, simple experiments, and some of them may be complex or the equipment is available in India. So once you start making nanoparticles, you can provide them to anyone who can make different properties or use different properties for different applications. Now, doping technique, which I developed, is a statistical process, so it requires a lot of effort, and people have been doing it since I invented it, but it's still very nascent stage. It has to be perfected, and it will be done by pure experiments. So if there's a chemistry class, you will start teaching nanotechnology, and they're making nanoparticles, and they will see a lot of different properties coming without seeing the particles. So it's a development by doing the work. You can't theoretically describe that, and I prefer that's what in the last 30 years I've done. I've done a lot of numerous experiments. A lot of them fail, but you keep at it and it works. So what I wanted to say is start teaching magnetism, which is a lost art today. But magnetism will come back. Just like circuits are there will be magnetic circuits. And so somebody has to start somewhere, and I have not taught these courses, but there's always open, it is available to do.
Thank you very much. Raji, I would have a similar question for you. Again, what you are doing in terms of display technologies The future is very bright with products like Meta and 3D renderings, also with the virtual screens that are now integrated with glasses and so on and so forth. I mean, how do you think these kinds of developed consumer product adoption can be sort of infused into the thinking of our technical institutes, so people start thinking about productizing these ideas and bringing them to market? You spend a lifetime doing this for the AMOLED products. How can the IITs sort of bring that culture of looking at these products becoming large industries, as you have indicated?
Okay, so as you know, most of us are products of IITs. We learn good
Yeah.
things and have a little time to do practical things. And you learn that on the job when you graduate. Some of that, all the things that we have heard from my colleagues and speakers here, need to be brought back into the IITs instead of complete focus on just the theoretical aspects of it. So I've set up a lab, for instance, in IIT within the realm of my expertise to train young people on something different, not just the display itself, but how to make it, how to make, how to construct uh, advanced vacuum systems and evaporation systems, etc. It's not something you normally do. You don't, in the US in graduate school, we go out and make machines and go to the warehouse and get metal sheets. We build component and make something practical. That culture is still not there. I think with the advent of drones and mechanical things that are happening in IITs these days, driven mainly by the another field, people are doing that, but more so should happen in the uh, semiconductor field. It's been designed good, but somebody else has designed rules, but nobody creates a new design rule because there's no practical places to do it in. So I would say more of this kind of talk of making it what we all learn a lifetime in other places to make happen the ecosystem, the infrastructure must be there. So that's the only way to do it actually in the lab.
Yeah.
So
So hats
curriculums are no
off to
problem.
you.
We have created curriculums for teaching all this. But then that's another book exercise. How do you make it happen?
Wonderful. Hats off to you, because you spent your life here in the US and then went back to IIT Madras to teach, and you become the ambassador and the change agent that the IITs need to bring that kind of culture into the campus. So my next question is for Ranbir. The Maker Power initiative is fantastic. It clearly gives the students an opportunity to not only sort of learn about robotics, etc., but also make it in the laboratory, so that the Maker Bhavan provides. And one of the comments in the questions from the audience is, how do IITs become, graduates and alumni go from being job seekers to job creators? So one way is to actually do these, maybe they are demo systems, maybe they are actually working models of like the smart watch that you mentioned, maybe even make other innovations possible. So do you have any thoughts on how, and also it brings the capital down as you required for manufacturing these things. So do you have any thoughts on how the output from these Maker Bhavan, types of initiatives can come into the market? What kind of linkages can you provide between the innovation that's happening in the IITs to actually to the industry and the financiers who can make this at scale? Over to you.
Sure. So I wanted to, distinguish a few things here. First of all, Make a Bhavan Foundation, and I saw some of the questions here asked also. Make a Bhavan is not just restricted to IITs. Okay, it is actually being done in many other colleges also under the Maker Bhavan sort of umbrella. That's one thing I wanted to talk about. Second thing I wanted to talk about is Maker Bhavan is a good conduit for the open source hardware concept that I have talked about, but the open source hardware is in itself an independent thing that I want to evangelize. Okay, so open source hardware is, and I would encourage you to give out that slide deck that I gave, and I have a much bigger one. People should just do research on themselves on all the links I've provided. In my opinion, this is pure democratization. It does not necessarily have to be in educational institutions themselves. They should just be, some entrepreneur comes and looks at some idea that is really very compelling, develops his own laboratory, and there are a lot of detailed instructions on how to do that, and then develops the products and sells them. Now, one question you asked is what are the avenues for entrepreneurship, or how do you actually create products and start making into a viable product, a viable business? So I do want to point out a few things at a very micro level. There are a few websites that I had mentioned, like Crowd Supply and Tindy, and also Indiegogo and so on, where you showcase your product, and if it's really good, you can actually ask people to buy it from you. So there is a strict sort of a way in which they lay it out, but you can start selling it at a very small scale. This, in my opinion, can even be done by someone who has almost no money, because you can actually get money in advance from people. On a bigger scale, there are a whole lot of such laboratories, not just under the Maker Bhavan, but there are incubation sites all over India. The biggest one is actually, I believe, in Hyderabad, which is, I forget the name of it, but there is a big, incubation site sponsored by the government of Telangana, I think, which hosts, it's like a we work like place, like incubation space or accelerator spaces. There are also a lot of programs from the government, Indian government, where they give seed capital and so on, which are to start small companies. And the last point I'll make is, you don't have to make an entire system. Like, for example, like a laptop. If you look at AliExpress, you will see numerous examples of not just entire systems, but subsystems, sub-subsystems, sub, like components which people are selling. And it leads to a very, very dynamic market. And that's what makes China click so well, because there are tens of people doing small things, which are in itself not completely self, things that can be sold to an end user, but it creates an entire supply chain with a lot of competition and optionality.
Thank you.
To answer your
That's
question.
wonderful, because my next question for Sundar sort of tries to bring it all together. Sundar, you run a very large organization and you have very nicely outlined all the products that can be manufactured perhaps in India and substitute, the imports that are made now. And, just to take from what Rajeshwarji and Raji, others have said here, how have you considered publishing the import substitution requirements that Sanmina has in India in a manner that the IITs or other institutions can say, geez, we have a ready-made market. We have someone here who is looking for these products. Okay. How do we manufacture? How do we bring that to, to bring it back to India from an academic perspective all the way to actually manufacturing and supplying? Can you think of any way in which large corporations like you can fund, through your CSR activities, some of these Maker Bhavan type of things, some of these. So, you were with us when Wheels took a contingent to Pandharpur, and we were absolutely blown away by the kind of entrepreneurship that exists amongst those children from the villages in Pandharpur and all the innovations that they demonstrated to us. So, have you
Right.
considered, as a manufacturer and a producer in India, and based here in California, as to how you can be the catalyst that brings it all together?
Yeah, very good point, Suresh, and that's something that we are seriously looking at. Um, our first few years in India have been predominantly in establishing the factory, the ecosystem, the supply chain, and ensuring that we can build quality products that our OEM customers uh, can receive all over the world. There's been a lot of internal focus in making this successful. I think we are now at a stage where we can start doing the kind of things. And I've actually talked to a few trade bodies about creating this global supply chain ecosystem forum to bring all of us together and work with the government on establishing that infrastructure for supply chain. On the academic side, we have actually worked quite closely with the IIT Madras Research Park on helping a couple of the startups that came out of IIT Madras. Aegis Networks way back in the early days, and then Aether Energy, the EV company, scooter, two-wheeler. We worked to help, and then a couple other companies. So we have been engaged specifically with IIT Madras on the research park side. But I think we need to do a lot more. And I agree with you. I think getting the students involved in manufacturing, the standard route today is IT services, right? The majority of them going to the soft side of the business. And of course, there are engineers, good engineers who are starting companies. But the challenge on the open source hardware forum and the Maker Bhavan and all of this, it gives great skills to the entrepreneurs. The challenge is the go to market. How do they get their products into the market? And how do they ensure manufacturing quality and consistency and volume and all of that? So that's another problem that needs to be solved. But I totally agree with you that we need to do more on the interaction with academia, on setting up prototype lines within universities so that engineers get hands-on experience. What does it cost to make a product? Whether it's a PCB or a die casting versus injection molding and all those things. So
Thank
it's
you.
work that needs to be done.
Yeah, thank you. I have made a list of a lot of key takeaways from today's inaugural event. I mean, this is really amazing forum to have, and I hope that we can continue to attract thought leaders like yourselves on this panel. As you may know, that Wheels has created a collaboration platform twice. One is on a project in Himachal Pradesh for collaborative governance, which Gauri and Yogesh Andle on our team developed, which is finding tremendous use in many other projects. Ratan has helped to sort of trigger a collaboration platform among NGOs. What I'm going to, thinking about and recommending is that we try to create a platform where companies like Sanmina can talk about the key products that you seek to substitute by manufacturing locally in India. So this will probably trigger some ideas within the academic organizations as well as even vocational training programs and say, hey, there is a real demand for this. And if we get some real interested, motivated students participating in that, perhaps industry can mentor them for quality control, for pricing and bringing it to market. Ranbir talked about his social venture program, which is also they're looking for initiatives. We've got others like Sobus from Digvijay within the Wheels Group and Ivy Cap Ventures and others who are looking for investing in such companies that find ready markets and import substitution. So with that, I wish to thank each one of you for taking your time to share your talent and experience. These are very important parts of the philanthropic process: time, talent, and treasure, of course. So, the think tank's objective is precisely to bring these kind of thoughts to the open. Our partners within the administration, several ministers have come to us asking us to sort of help them reach out to the alumni and to in the Indian diaspora with experience and talent that can be useful to them in formulating policies, in coming up with their procurement processes, and also understanding how to set priorities in what sector and so on, which will take India to its next objective of getting up to be the large one of the among the top 2 or 3 economies in the world. There are a lot of impediments and hurdles. Somebody in the questions asked us about the impact of tariffs. There are 900 million people who live in India's rural areas, which is more than the population of Europe and North America combined. So there is a huge market that is underserved. and Wheels can help in sort of identifying the kinds of products and technologies that will put these people to work, create employment opportunities, and build new industries. And we can do that here in the US as well, helping our communities that we have adopted here. So once again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Ratan, and
Suresh, I have
everybody.
just a couple of
Yeah,
announcements before we
yeah.
close.
No,
Yeah,
no, you
just
have to do the closing remarks. Yeah, go ahead.
yes. So just a couple of announcements. Number one, I think we were just amazingly fortunate to have four world-class speakers in the manufacturing electronics domain. So this is our first of the series. We will be looking forward to have another panel sometime in October. And the goal is to take the insights and key recommendations, actionable recommendations from these discussions to Niti Aayog for policy support, and then to the right authorities in our overall government system to make it actionable, whether actionable in the government policies, investments, or actionable in the IIT ecosystem also, where Wheels has established very close relationships. And secondly, so do expect the second panel sometime in October. We will also have the next webinar on 13th September, Saturday, 2 weeks from now, on about one of the verticals of the health in the Wheels 6 domains. So we will have a terrific group of panelists on health, particularly focusing on how public-private partnerships are so vital to scale proven innovations in health sector. We will have wonderful examples of how that is being done and more opportunities that lie ahead with that model and what Suresh alluded to, the collaborative governance or public-private partnerships. So look for that. Again, the recording of this webinar will be available on our website. We will be posting the responses to the questions which we were not able to take. And lastly, again, we really appreciate not only the time from the panelists, but also the audience. I know the weekend is not the ideal time for these discussions, but in spite of that, all of you making time from different time zones and coming here. And so thanks again. We look forward to participation from all of you. And I'm sure the insights today will result into meaningful actions because we have wide diversity of audience on the session today, and we expect that audience to help us convert these insights into actions. So thanks again, and thanks again to our panelists for making time today. Suresh, thank you very much for hosting the session today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks a lot.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
With
you.
that, we can call the session closed. Thank you.
Thank you.